All right. Hello to our friends joining us via recording. We are looking at our course Canvas site right now. So whenever you log into Canvas, you will always see our home screen at the very beginning. The home screen has some quick links for you that you can actually see on the left side as well. So we're scrolling down. Today we're in the virtual lab classroom. We'll be in the real one here in a couple of weeks. But down here at the bottom, here's some quick links for you. First thing are announcements. I will definitely post you an announcement at least once a week. So at least on Sunday night to remind you what we're doing in class that week. Sometimes I will post announcements in the middle of the week or later in the week if there's something for you to know. You should get those announcements via email, but in case you are wondering if you've had an announcement lately, you can click here and it'll take you to the announcements section and it'll have announcements for you. So first thing on your home screen when you first log in, those announcements. Next thing on your home screen is some general course information. So when we click here for the syllabus and the calendar, the first thing at the top is what TCC calls the ICR. So it's the fancy word for the syllabus. That has some information for you about things like our grading scale, our course structure. That would be a good document to check out just so you're aware of things. I've made for you a specific lecture calendar for our course. Let me go ahead and pull that up to show you. So I've divided up the calendar for us into what we're doing on Monday and what we're doing on Wednesday. Today's class is an introductory class. We're going to be working on lesson number 1 in today's class. And I'll zoom in to make it a little bit bigger for us. So we're working on lesson number 1 today. We're not going to cover all of the content together in our class time. So there will be some that you'll need to cover outside of class. For our class time that we have next Monday, we're going to be working through the content generally on the first 5 pages of lesson number 2, but we might get a little bit farther than that. We might not quite get that far. The purpose of this calendar is to tell you before I come to class on Monday, I should try to complete pages 1 through 5 of my lesson outline. And I'll show you how to do that. I've given you a specific resource that's tailored just to those outlines. So it should be really easy for you to finish pages 1 through 5 before we come to class on Monday. Next Wednesday, we're going to be finishing lesson number 2. So by next Wednesday, make sure we've done pages 6 through 7 of that outline. So as we go through here, we can see what topics we're covering those days, and you can see what pages of those lesson outlines that you'll need to be working on before class. Notice that I do have those exams listed for you, the lecture and the lab exams. So our first lecture exam, if you're a note taker, this would be a good thing to write down for us. Our first lecture exam is my Valentine's gift to you. I apologize, it's bad timing, but Valentine's Day, won't you be my Valentine and take exam 1? So that is what we will be doing on February 14th. The next exam that we'll be taking is our lab exam. So the lab exam will be either Monday or Wednesday of this week, depending on what day your normal lab is. You'll take that with your normal lab class. Rather than making you take an exam right after spring break, I delayed that exam by 1 day. So our next exam is going to be March 23rd. That's the Wednesday after spring break. Then we've got a few more weeks of class, our third exam on April 18th. Then we get into crunch time because that next week we take the lab final. And the next week we take our last lecture exam. And then we transition into our final exam during finals week. So this calendar available to you on the homepage. If you are someone who likes to cross things off as you go, I definitely recommend printing it. There's something, at least to me, cathartic about going through and crossing off classes as we get through them. So this calendar is available for you. It outlines what we're doing in lecture, and it outlines the days and times of our exams. I'm going to pop over really fast to the chat. I know I have a notification. Let me see. Oh, that is my transcript. Everything I said. Gage asked about attendance. So I will be able to generate a list of who's here based on who logs into the meeting. So if you want to make sure your attendance is taken, just make sure that you've got a note in the chat at some point, even if it's something as simple as a smiley face, but it should generate a list for me. So you're good. I didn't formally take attendance. All right, so that is the course calendar. I'm going to close that out. The next thing in this area is the lab calendar. So the lab calendar is, I included the same kinds of things as you can see on the lecture calendar. But what I will mention about the lab calendar is that it also outlines for you when we have quizzes. So each week in lab, we will be taking lab quizzes. These quizzes are going to be computer-based. For you to be able to take these quizzes outside of class, you will need to have a webcam. If you do not have a webcam, chat with me after lab or after today's lecture class before lab, and we'll talk about what we need to do for that. But for you to be able to take a lab quiz at home, you'll need to have a webcam so I can monitor you taking that quiz with the webcam. You'll need to do the typical at-home quizzing thing where we sweep our desk to show Dr. Allis there's nothing there, and then you can take that quiz. So each time we have quizzes, those will be computer-based. They'll be administered through Canvas. We will all be together in the lab classroom when we take our lab midterm exam, as well as when we take our lab final exam. So these are the names of the lab packets we'll be covering each week. When we're looking at the calendar, today's lab packet is right here, lab lesson number 1. So we're getting ready for me to show you where you'd find that packet. The last thing that I want to mention on this page here is something that's really helpful for you, and this is the course summary. So the course summary shows you when you have assignments due. Our first set of assignments are due on Sunday. So by Sunday night at 11:59, you need to complete the first homework assignment related to lecture. So today's lecture lesson is anatomy versus physiology. How are they the same? How are they different? So this assignment, you need to complete it by 11:59 by the end of the night on Sunday. This assignment and all of the assignments that you complete in Canvas for me, you have unlimited attempts on those assignments. I will keep your highest score. So if the first time you take it, you get a 97, and the second time you take it, you get an 82, you're done taking it, I will keep the 97. But what that also means is you can take it as many times as it takes to get your 100. So any of your homework assignments for lecture or for lab, unlimited attempts. There's no reason you shouldn't be getting 100% on these homework assignments because you can do them until you get 100%. When you finish the assignment, it will let you click through it and see what questions you got right, what questions you got wrong. It will not show you the right answer, but it will help you to know, okay, I need to check my notes. Something's up with this answer I did here. So that's the same for lecture and for lab. So some of these assignments are lab assignments. Some of them are lecture assignments. I'll mention, excuse me, for my friends who are typically in a Monday lab class. So some of us here are popping into today's lab because Monday labs were canceled. We didn't have class. Your homework assignments for lab are typically going to be due on Sundays. So I don't have a lot of those due dates in here just yet, but you'll notice that for the most part, when we're turning in lab assignments, Sunday night's a big night for you because there's usually going to be lecture stuff due and lab stuff due. For my friends in the Wednesday lab, your homework assignments for lab will be due Tuesday night right before you come to lab class. So Tuesday night at 11:59. And when you check your Canvas site, it'll have the dates correct for you, up to date as you would expect. So all of this are our syllabus, the calendar for lecture, the calendar for lab. All of that, let me show you, we got to on the home screen from right here. So click here for the syllabus and the calendar. That's right here. The next place that's going to be really important for you is this one right here. So click here for learning materials. So when I click here for those learning materials, you're going to see a bunch of modules, a bunch of groups of content. Now, here's the good news. When you get to this page, anything that you're done looking at, this little arrow right here that's pointing down right now, if I click on it, it goes sideways and this information goes away. So when you're done looking at all the stuff that's general lab information, go ahead and click that arrow. Now it's out of the way. It's not going to bug you. Here is what we're doing in lecture today. So for each week, you'll see it listed for you. Here's the lesson that we're covering. Here's the resources you need for this week. Here's the assignments you need to complete for the week. So for today's class, when we're done doing an overview, we're going to transition into working on lesson number 1. So when you click on our outline here for lesson number 1, you're going to want to download it onto your computer. I'm not going to do that step right now. I'm going to save the bandwidth, but you'll want to download it onto your computer. Consider printing it because that is a great way for you to take notes. Otherwise, if you have the ability to edit PDFs on your computer, you can do it virtually. That's totally fine. So each lesson that we complete together has an outline for you. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so you can see a little bit more. So we're going to talk about in class today, we'll cover some of this stuff here on the first page. So we've got some spaces for you to write in answers to questions, a couple of things where we're talking about the definition of things. When we get a little bit farther into this packet, we start to have some specific examples of anatomy and physiology. So you would fill in these blank spaces. Here's a pro tip from Dr. Ollis. When you're working on filling in these outlines, you're going to see a lot of places where it says stop and think it through. It's really easy for you to just blaze over this because you don't want to stop and think it through. But I was talking with some students last semester. After they took the first exam, they were like, I didn't fill in that part of my outline. And that's all the kinds of questions I had trouble with on the exams. So I'd really encourage you, even if the first time you're filling in your outline, you don't know the answer to the stop and think it through question yet, make sure you can answer it at some point in your studying, because this is a time where I'm purposely telling you, hey, let's put some stuff side by side. Let's think about this and make sure we can process it together. So make sure to take advantage of those stop and think it through moments that we have throughout these notes outlines. I don't know that there's much else. So this is our first outline. We'll cover some of it today. You'll cover the rest of it at home. All right, so I'm going to leave the outline. So we just looked at this right here, the outline for lesson number 1. Highly recommend that you print this and write your notes on it. Also bring your completed outline with you to class because I'm not going to cover everything, but I'll probably emphasize stuff for you. So you'll want to have it there with you to highlight things, to mark them up, to make sure you can take extra notes. The way that you're going to complete those outlines before class is using the online guided lessons. So I'm going to pop up lesson number 1 for you. For each of our lecture lessons and for each of our lab lessons, you have a guided lesson to walk you through it. So at the beginning of these guided lessons, you have a list of the learning objectives. Learning objectives are basically your study guide for that material. So by the end of you reviewing lesson number 1, these are the things that I want to make sure you are able to do. You should be able to tell me what anatomy is, what physiology is, what a suture is. So this is a list. The first objective is always a define objective. These are the words that when you take a quiz or an exam, I'm going to assume that you know what they mean. So I'm not going to ask you to describe them. You're not going to write me a definition, but I will use those terms as if you know what they mean. After that, we get into a list of what I like to call on this one, describe and explain learning objectives. A describe or explain learning objective is one that you don't like quite as much because we can't really memorize our way through a describe or explain learning objective. When I ask you to describe the relationship between anatomy and physiology, the best way for you to know if you can do this, honestly, is to talk it out loud. Talk it to a classmate, talk it to someone in your family, or if you're kind of awkward, like Dr. Ollis, maybe you don't want to talk this out to somebody else, just talk it out to yourself out loud. There's something about saying things and hearing them that makes you have to process it in a new way. So when we have a learning objective that says, describe something, do your little rambling describing out loud. Make sure you can actually describe it. When we have a learning objective that says explain, that's another one. We got to talk it out loud. We got to make sure we can give the details about it. Because when I have a describe or explain learning objective, that means that Dr. Ollis, when she is doing a test or a quiz, I might ask you to apply the information that you're learning. So I might give you a special scenario like, hey, something's wrong with a suture joint. Now what's going to happen? For you to be able to answer that question, you need to know what a suture joint's normally like. So describe and explain learning objectives. We'll see that as we start working on exams together and activities together. These are the ones that we want to talk out loud, either to ourselves or to our peers. After we see this page of the learning objectives, then we jump into course content. So these guided lessons match your lesson outlines completely. They're exactly the same. So the place on your outline where you've got a space that says, explain what anatomy is. Well, here's a quick description for you of what anatomy is. Right below that, it says explain what physiology is. Well, here's a description of physiology. So these lessons take the place of a course textbook. You're not required to buy a textbook for this course. If you'd like another reference to use aside from these lessons, there is a free anatomy textbook available online. But I believe that these guided lessons are going to be sufficient for you. They'll have what you need. So before class, you'll work your way through the guided lessons. Sometimes they'll have some practice questions embedded in them. When you complete that question, here, let me just randomly check some things. Some of my answers aren't quite right. This will give me feedback while I'm working on the lesson to know if I'm right or wrong, and it's completely ungraded. So it's a chance for you to practice what you're learning. So as you work your way through the lesson, it's going to have lots of helpful information for you. We have this for every single one of the lessons that you cover in our class. So let me go back briefly, and then I'm going to check my chat. Here's what we've looked at so far. We're in lecture week number 1. We looked at that outline, which you should print or download onto your computer. We've looked at on our lesson the learning objectives that tell us what we should be able to do with the information we've learned. And we've looked at our guided lesson, which is what we're going to use to help us fill in our outline for the lesson. I need to stop talking for a bit and give you a chance to post your questions or your thoughts or an emoji in the chat. So I'm going to pull up my teams really fast. If you have any questions you'd like me to answer or thoughts, go ahead and post those for me really fast. I'm going to minimize this and go up. Okay, so I see a general course question. We only have lab 1 day a week, and thank you to Hugh for working on that. So whatever day of the week WebAdvisor says that you have lab, it'll either be Monday or Wednesday. You will only come on Monday or Wednesday for lab. We do have lecture classes scheduled for both days. Sometimes those classes will be virtual. Sometimes I might let you loose and say, hey, today is a work on your own day. And so we may not have a class session. So again, be watching Canvas. I'll post announcements about that. Let's see. Yeah, so Liza, if you continue to have questions, let me know and I can look you up in my system to make sure you're coming on the right day. Let's see. Kitwana has a note about a class code. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Kitwana. Um, you should be able to just access our class through your Canvas dashboard. If that's not the case, you may not be registered for our class. So that could be an issue. Let's see. Yeah, so I see some of us that are talking about working together on stuff. Yes, please. Absolutely. Let's teamwork on stuff. So when we're looking at, I'm going to minimize this really fast. When you're working on filling in the outline, make sure that you can do it by yourself, but you're totally welcome to compare what you've written with classmates. When you're working on the homework assignments, you're welcome to say, hey, I got this question wrong. I thought it was right. Can you help me answer this question? Every time you do the homework assignments, you're going to get a different set of questions. Every time your friends do the homework assignments, they're going to get a different set of questions, but you're totally able to collaborate with each other and talk with each other about these assignments or about questions that you have. So yes, please do get to know people both in your lab as well as people here in the lecture class. Later in our class time today, I'm going to split you up into small groups. It'll, full disclosure, it's going to be my first time. So I'm hoping I don't crash the system, but it'll be a chance for you to connect with some classmates more one-on-one. So we're going to try to get some of that community going here in our class as well. So I know I saw another question. We're not turning in these notes outlines. We're also not turning in our lab packets. But every semester, when I ask students what was most helpful for you in studying for our class and preparing for our class, they always say the notes outlines. So even though you're not turning them in, make sure that you complete them. Make sure that you're taking notes on them, highlighting them, studying the life out of those things. I promise you, from Dr. Allis's side, I promise you that when I write the exams for you, when I write the quizzes for you, I am using those same resources to help me know what questions I can ask. So you're not turning them in, but they are your single best learning resource in our class. Definitely powwow with friends. We can compare answers. That's totally, totally cool. Let's see. Yeah, so Deny, that's correct. You're going to want to do your lesson outlines before class. If you want to do an attempt or two on the homework assignments before class, that would be a great way to prepare as well. It'll help you to know what questions you have to ask. Valerie asked a great question about the guided lessons, if we should be putting things word for word from those lessons, or if we should be putting it in our own words. I would recommend, for the most part, trying to put it in your own words because you are building a study tool for yourself. You will have access to these online guided lessons even beyond unit number 1. You can come back to this lesson and look at it. So basically what I'm saying is think about these kind of like a textbook. You always have access to a textbook. There's no really helpful reason for you to copy down word for word what the textbook says. So as much as possible, try to put things in your own words. Sometimes you will see that there are places where there's a blank in the outline where there's a key word that I want you to make sure to write down. But for the most part, a lot of summarizing, putting stuff in your own words is the best way to go. So yeah, great question. I would prefer you not write everything word for word. The short answer to Dr. Allis is much too long talking. Yeah, so Hannah's asking again about a special to a specific schedule. It's going to vary a little bit week by week. Tentatively, we're planning on being online for both sessions next week as well, but I will confirm that by tomorrow afternoon. So keep checking Canvas. Again, we'll let you know for sure. Probably by week 3, we will at least have to start doing some of our lab stuff in person with the microscopes. Lecture stuff may vary a little bit, so we'll see about that. All right. I think I have caught most of my questions. Let's pause for a moment. I want to take an emoji break here. Dr. Ollis is one of my favorite things to do in online classes is take an emoji break. So what I want you to do, if you can, I know my iPad friends can't do this, but if you can, go down to the little emoji down here. I would love for you to send me an emoji. What are we thinking? How are we feeling right now? That we've talked about some stuff. Let's have an emoji break here. Dr. Ollis has talked way too long. We'll go side by side. Oh, good. I'm getting some happy emojis. Good. I'm going to do a little search here. I think, there we go. Dr. Ollis is going to send you all a brain. Love it. Good. It's always a good sign when we're not crying on the first day of class. I like this. This is good. I like it, Hannah. Hannah's too cool for me. I pretend to be cool. I'm not cool. Actually, I don't even pretend to be cool. I fully own that I'm a nerd. So at least once this semester, you will see me in a skeleton dress. I have a dress that's skeleton. Oh, and check this out, y'all. Dr. Ollis, I don't know if you can see it. It's probably a little bit blurry. I have on my Apple Watch a skeleton themed band. If you need to know how nerdy your teacher is, that's about the extent of it. So that with my skeleton dress, I got some skeleton earrings. It's coming soon. So you will see my nerd. Oh, you're totally fine, Rihanna. It may not work. It may not work on the device you're using. So you're totally fine. Okay, so we're almost done reviewing course resources. It only took us, 40 minutes, right? There's a couple more things I want to point out really fast. For some of the lessons that we're doing together, you will also see that we have an extra learning activity. So here in unit number 1, we've got a couple of lessons with a learning activity, including our first lesson here. So the learning activity that you're going to do related to anatomy and physiology is you're going to compare the anatomy and physiology of the two kinds of fat that we have in the body. So the kind of fat that you normally hear about when we talk about fat in the body is white fat. But the body also has a kind of fat called brown fat. So you're going to do a compare and contrast activity. I have created for you, I'll just show you really fast, a worksheet. Oh, I guess it won't show you, so I'll have to download it. I've created this worksheet for you to help you take notes on an article. So there's an online article called What's the Difference Between White Fat and Brown Fat? You can access it here. I also put a link in our Canvas shell. I've got a set of questions for you as you're reading this article. Make sure you can answer these questions. Once you've filled in this way of taking notes, this notes outline, if you will, for the article, then we also have a homework assignment specifically related to this learning activity. So we haven't talked a lot about the homework assignments yet. For each week, you'll see an area where those assignments are posted. So we have an assignment that's related to our regular lecture stuff, the stuff that we'll be talking about soon, anatomy and physiology. We also have a homework assignment that is related to that article that you're reading. So notice that by Sunday night, we need to make sure we've completed the anatomy versus physiology, the regular homework assignment. I'm giving you a little bit extra time on the brown fat and white fat activity, just because we're at the beginning of the semester, we're getting into a groove. But if you have it done, go ahead and try to wrap this activity up by Sunday night as well. So for lecture for week 1, 2 lecture homework assignments. We can see them right here. If for some reason, after using the guided lesson, you feel like, and after attending our class together, you feel like you still have questions about our lesson, for each of the weeks, I will post for you recordings from previous semesters that I've done with students. We are a blended class, which means sometimes we'll have class online. A lot of times we'll have class in person. So these recordings are from semesters where I was fully online with my students. So you'll notice for each of our weeks together for lecture, there'll be some recordings from previous semesters. There is a note on those recordings, and I just want to make sure I emphasize this with you, that any talk about dates, any talk about assignments, or the format of things, you probably need to ignore that because those are my online students. But if you want content, reviewing those kinds of content questions, these recordings will help you as well. So remember, when you finish up everything in week 1, you can click this little arrow, it'll disappear. Your lab resources are set up the same way, where we've got a worksheet. And after that worksheet, we've got an online guided lesson, just like the lecture lesson, almost exactly the same structure there. For lab, you're typically going to have 2 homework assignments a week, or when we get later into the semester, it can be as many as like 4, depending on the amount of content that we're covering in lab. Again, with lab, just like with lecture, you can do these assignments as many times as you like. Do them until you get your 100s. No reason to not get full credit. Because our labs were canceled on Monday this week, even for my Monday lab friends, I gave you until Tuesday night to complete the homework assignments. That being said, you are taking your first lab quiz on Monday. So it's better for you to make sure that you've done these homework assignments before that lab quiz so that you have that review. These are going to be your single best review for those weekly lab quizzes. Because here's a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. The questions that are on your weekly quizzes are literally the same as the questions that are on these homework assignments. So you're going to see the exact same kind of stuff popping up on those quizzes. If we've done our practice with these homework assignments, you're set. You're in good shape. There's one other resource we're using this semester, and it's just for lab. It's something called Visible Body. So Visible Body is a online 3D software. It's kind of, we might call it dissection based. So this week, we have a couple of assignments in Visible Body that are related to body organs. So finding those organs, or there's another one related to the bones of the body. You have 2 weeks of free access to Visible Body. At the end of those 2 weeks, you will have to pay for access for it for the rest of the semester. You actually get access to their online homework stuff for a full year, and they have some apps that you're able to download onto your phone for the rest of your life. So to help you if you're going into nursing school or dentistry school, those kinds of things. Before you try to do any Visible Body homework assignments, like we see the link to right here, you will need to make sure, back up here at the very top, that you click here first. Because to get into my Visible Body class, you have to register for it. But the good news is when you click on this, it's going to get you registered. You'll set up an account. It's easiest for you to use your TCC email address if you can. If you've already made an account with a different email address, that's not a problem. You're totally fine. But create an account, use your 2 weeks of free access here. Then it'll prompt you to pay at the end of 2 weeks. You'll continue to have access throughout the semester. You'll have the lab homework assignments here in Canvas, like we see here. And you'll also see a note each week. By the way, here's what we've got going on in Visible Body. Again, I've talked way too long. Let me check the chat to make sure we don't have any questions. If you have any questions about this lab stuff or the lecture stuff we covered, let's see. So Alejandro asked about conflicts. If you are scheduled for classes at the same time, yes, that will be a conflict. So we would need to powwow about whether or not it's going to work for you to take anatomy this semester if you're taking another class that's scheduled at the same time. Because especially in the weeks when we are doing fully on-site, which will be some of the weeks to come, that'll be problematic for us. So touch base with me at the end of our class time, and we'll see if that's a scheduling issue. All right. We got to all of this from the home page. So we click on the home page, or we log in, and this is what we hit the home page. Here's those announcements. Check them at least once a week, preferably twice a week, right before our classes. Here is our syllabus, our calendar. Here's our lecture and lab stuff. The one last thing that I do want to mention for you is that there are resources down here related to COVID-19. As much as we all want to be done with the pandemic, it refuses to die, right? My 5-year-old calls it the sickness. So the sickness is still in the world, which means there's some important things related to our class that we need to take into consideration. If you either have a confirmed COVID-19 diagnosis, if you have a known exposure to someone with COVID-19, if you have someone in your family who has COVID-19, I need you to fill out this form that's highlighted here in green to let TCC know about what's going on. TCC will determine whether it's safe for you to come back to the classroom right away, whether you need to wait, whether you need to wear a mask or not. All of those things are in TCC's hands. They make those decisions. For the safety of your classmates, though, please make sure that you don't come to class if you're feeling sick. Please fill out this form for me. We will make the arrangements we need to, but I don't want my classes to be a super spreader event. By now, at this stage in the pandemic, we all know what the symptoms of COVID-19 are, but if you want a refresher, here's a refresher on that. And I will mention that we are online today. When we return to the classroom, if you want to know whether or not it's a good idea to wear a mask, I've included a map here from the CDC website that says where we should be wearing masks. If you live somewhere that is an area with high or substantial viral spread, they recommend wearing a mask. So I'm going to let the map speak for itself. If you live somewhere that's red or orange, you should be considering wearing a mask. I can't talk this morning. Sorry, y'all. Wearing a mask when you come to class. Other than that, a little information about face masks, about what's happening in Tarrant County, that is all available for you as well. So home screen, where you land when you log in. The announcements, our course syllabus and calendar, our materials, COVID-19 stuff. You also have this nice arrangement over here on the left that shows you some important things. So if you just want to go to announcements from here, you can click here, it'll take you to announcements. If you want to view our syllabus, you can click that from over here. Here's all that lecture and lab content right here in modules. Something that might be helpful for you if you want to look at assignments really quickly at a glance, you can click on the assignments and it lists for you what's coming up. When is it due? How many points is it? So if you want a quick review, what do I have going on that's due? Click on that assignments area. And then of course there's the grades section that shows you where you're at in the course, what you've done, that kind of thing. Before we move into course content, finally, do we have any other questions about our Canvas resources? Check my chats. Okay. Perfect. So I'm seeing some comments. Yeah, if you've got a micro lab that starts at 12:30, you're golden. You're safe. Lecture exams will definitely be in person, Madison. Lab exams will definitely be in person. We will be doing some quizzing that may be online. And for that, I mentioned it a little earlier. We'll talk about it more later. For any online quizzing, you will need to have a webcam. If you don't have a webcam, we'll talk about figuring out how to address that together. Any other questions? Let's see, if we do get COVID and had to miss lab. So if you catch COVID and you have to miss a lab section, there may not be recordings available from this semester. Most of our labs will be in person. That being said, I have done this course virtually and I would have some recordings available for you. I'm hoping that we don't have to miss lab for COVID, but if you have COVID, please don't come to lab, obviously. So just be in touch with me. We will make the arrangements that we need to. That's true of everything. Um, if you catch COVID, please don't be ashamed about it. Don't be afraid to report it to TCC. I am 100% willing to work with you. I just need to have my paperwork in line with TCC so that I am covered to administer things to you late to get you caught up on our course. So good question. We'll do our best not to catch COVID, but I will work with you if you do. All right, I'm finally done talking to you about the structure of our course. uh, let's talk a little bit of content today. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between anatomy and physiology. Once we've talked a little bit about the difference, I'm going to split us up into some groups, and we're going to try to practice using anatomy and physiology together. When we talk about anatomy and physiology, the two components of our course here, when you think about anatomy, the simplest way for us to summarize what anatomy is where it's at. So if we're talking about where something is located in the body, what it looks like, the way that it fits compared to other things in the body, all of that is anatomy. What's there, what it looks like. So I will mention multiple times in the semester. I'll ask you all what my favorite system is. So Dr. Ollis's favorite system is the digestive system. And the reason that I like the digestive system is when I was in graduate school, I studied something called the gut-brain axis. And the gut-brain axis is this idea that the bacteria that live inside your digestive system impact the way that you think and feel. So if the bacteria in your small intestine and your large intestine are happy and healthy, your gut brain axis is happy and healthy too. But if those bacteria are not happy and healthy, maybe you have an infection or you just took antibiotics and you killed all the good guys, those kinds of things can do more than just impact the way that your gut works. It can actually impact your brain as well. So, all of that to say, I really like the digestive system. It's fascinating to me. When I'm talking about the anatomy of my favorite system, I'm talking about things like the liver is up here at the top, or the small intestines look more pink compared to the large intestine that looks more red or brown. Anatomy is where things are at. It's how they interact with each other. Anatomy is structures, and we're going to do most of our anatomy when we're in lab. Lecture is going to be a lot more physiology. So when you think about physiology, physiology is function, what things do. Um, so when we're thinking about the digestive system, my favorite system, the digestive system, we start at the top with the teeth, and the teeth break down food, and they take that food and they swallow it down through the esophagus. The esophagus swallows that food into the stomach, where we add some acid. Food works through the digestive system, different organs do different things. That's the physiology of the digestive system. I had a student tell me one semester, I can't take credit for this one, but she said, well, physiology is what makes things fun. So, anatomy, where it's at, physiology, what makes it fun. And what's more fun than being alive, right? So, physiology are functions, what makes things happen. When we're talking about anatomy and physiology, which is what our course is, anatomy and physiology, I will often use the terms that anatomy dictates physiology or physiology dictates anatomy. What that means is that the anatomy, what's there, what it looks like, determines the physiology, what it can do. Or if I know what something needs to do, its physiology, I can make predictions about what it looks like, its anatomy. So I'm going to ask you many, many times this semester, are anatomy and physiology related to each other? Yes or no? And every time, what should we say? Are anatomy and physiology related?
No.
Oh, I'm getting the crickets again. Yes or no? Let's type it in the chat. Anatomy and physiology, are they related, or they're two separate things that we're squeezing together in your required course?
Yes, they are.
There we go. Yep. Hey, I promise you can totally type at me at any time. I'm loving the floods of yeses. Thank you. You're affirming me this morning. I appreciate that. Yeah. So when I ask you the question, are anatomy and physiology related to each other? 100% yes. And we're going to see that all semester. So we'll look at in lab what the anatomy of something is. And then in lecture, we're going to go through and we're going to talk about the physiology of it. We're going to talk about how the way that it looks helps us predict what it's doing or the way that it functions. So anatomy and physiology always related to each other 100% of the time, like Seth summarized for me. Absolutely. One dictates the other. You can't have anatomy without physiology. You can't have physiology without anatomy. In the notes outline, you're going to be covering a lot of different examples of anatomy and physiology. Remember, I told you I'm not going to cover everything with you in class. I'm going to cover one of the examples with you and leave the other ones for you. So the example that I'm going to cover with you here in class, because I already told you I love the digestive system, we're going to talk about the teeth. Before I move on, by the way, I always like to ask this question in classes. Do I have anyone here who is wanting to apply to the dental hygiene program? Anyone interested in that? I probably should have polled us at the beginning. What about nursing? Do I have a lot of nursing? All right, I got a couple people. Awesome. Jessica and Hannah. Okay, there's some nursing. Yep. Yeah, so I'll mention a couple of dental hygiene friends. Okay, sonography program. Love it. Yeah, so you'll notice as we're flooding into the chat here, there are probably a lot of people that are going into the same program that you're interested in going into. So this class is a great opportunity for you to make some connections with study buddies. I love it, Noah, that you're want to be a firefighter. That's really cool. Environmental science, awesome. Yeah. So we've got some variety in here. We've got some friends who are doing the same stuff as us, different stuff as us. Definitely make some friends, get some study buddies, because you're going to be together at least all through this semester, possibly into next semester if you're taking AMP2 as well. So friends for life, right? That's what we're going for in our AMP1 class. All right, so my 3 or 4 dental hygiene friends, you are going to know way more about teeth than Dr. Allis does. But Dr. Allis is going to talk about a couple of types of teeth in the mouth here. So the first type of teeth that Dr. Allis is going to talk about are the teeth in the front of the mouth called the incisors. When I talk about the incisors and I want to describe their anatomy, there's a couple of different ways I can describe their anatomy. The first thing that I can use to describe anatomy is I can say that anatomy is where it's at. So the location of the incisors, they're found in the front of the mouth. That's describing their anatomy, where they're found. Another way that I can describe their anatomy is what they look like. When I look at an incisor, this is a very tall and skinny tooth that I see here in the front of the mouth. When I talk about the anatomy of the other kind of tooth that we're going to talk about today, which are the molars, oops, click over here. When we talk about the molars, their anatomy is that they're found in the back of the mouth. Where they're at, they're found in the back of the mouth. When I talk about their anatomy, that's what they look like. Molars are much broader on their top surface. They've got a lot more space up there. They're bigger teeth. See how they've got these 2 branches down here at the bottom. There are a lot of differences in the anatomy of these teeth. So it should be no surprise when we're looking at them that their physiology is different as well. Their functions are different as well. When I look at an incisor, those teeth in the front of the mouth, incisors are the teeth that I use to chop things or to cut them. This sharp surface, this edge that I see up here, works with the tooth above it almost like a pair of scissors to chop things, to cut them into little pieces. Molars, not so great at chopping. They don't have a sharp edge on them. What they do have is a big flat upper surface that we see right here. And that big flat upper surface is really good for grinding. When we put together two molars, they can take something that's in a big chunk, like that piece of carrot we bit off over here, and they can grind it up into something that's smaller to make it more swallowable. So when we think about the anatomy of these two types of teeth, this is different from the physiology of these two types of teeth. But notice how when we talk about their shape, it helps us to make a prediction about their function. Which brings us to a fun example. I won't often bring animals in to our discussion of human anatomy because humans and animals are not the same. But I do want to talk about a kind of animal called Bos taurus in our class time today. Any ideas in the chat for me? Any ideas what Bos taurus might be? Any guesses? I know I'm going all Latin on you here. My hint for you is Bos is the root of bovine. Yeah, we're getting some guesses that are absolutely right. Oh, I love it. I love that Seth was like that funny fish that has human teeth. I need to get a picture of that. That would be perfect. Thank you for the inspiration, Seth. I love it. So Bos taurus is the scientific name for cows. Yeah, for cattle, for bulls. Cows that look like this, right? Check out that smile, cheesing for us. That's the kind of cow that you would see if you're driving in the middle of nowhere at night in this field and you see a cow that has the light reflecting in its eyes, right? Because that's the way cow eyes work. And you see them smile like that and you're like, this is where I end. Like this is my life story. The Chick-fil-A cows have come to eat me. Yeah, eat more chicken, right? They would say eat more chicken and then they would eat me and it would be really sad. Yeah, so I think we all can recognize, right, that this is not what cow's teeth look like. That's what human teeth would look like in a cow. Cow teeth are actually an interesting look into anatomy and physiology. If we look at a cow's mouth, at the very front, they've got these little incisors that we see up here. These little incisors at the very front of their mouth, because cows spend their life chopping grass, right? They're going through, they're taking little bites, they're nibbling on hay, they're chopping things. But then look at the size of these molars. If you look in the back of a cow's mouth, not only do they have more molars than humans, but their molars are much larger than human molars. So when we're looking at cows, we can see that they must spend a lot of time grinding their food. Their anatomy is look at all the molars. Their physiology is I need to grind up my grass that I'm eating or my straw that I'm eating, because if I grind it and grind it and grind it enough, maybe I'll get a little tiny bit of nutrition out of it. So even though cows are not human, although cows with human teeth are super creepy and might be fun to study, cows have the same ideas, and all living things have the same idea. Anatomy, what's there, and physiology, what it does. They relate to each other. In a moment, I'm going to split us up into groups. What we're going to do, I'm going to skip through some slides here. These are the other topics you're going to cover in your at-home study. What we're going to do with our groups here is we're going to do some fun comparisons with things that are not food. So we're going to look at things together to describe the anatomy and the physiology of those things. So the example that I want to briefly do with you, even though it's not human, I think it applies to our class this morning. So on the left, we have coffee, which, man, Dr. Allis's cup of coffee is not feeling the love. I have talked too much. I need to stop talking. Okay, coffee, number one. We're going to compare the anatomy and the physiology of coffee to that of soda. Now, we're here in the South, so I have to ask this question. This is something like Coca-Cola or Pepsi. We'll say that's what's in the cup. What would you all call that that's in there? Coke? Yep. Even if it's Pepsi, if it was Pepsi in there, yeah, it's a Coke, right? If it's Coca-Cola, it's Coke, right? Soda, pop, Coke. Okay. The crowd has spoken. It's probably still Coke. Okay, so this is a glass of Coke. Forgive Dr. Allis's, I come from Colorado, so I don't know what I should be calling it, right? Oh, Seth is like, we don't drink Pepsi. Oh, okay. So this is a glass of Coke. When I'm looking at these two things, even though they're not humans, even though they're not alive, I can still apply these words anatomy and physiology to them. So when I'm talking about the anatomy of a cup of coffee, I'm talking about what's there, what it looks like. I'm describing its structure. So if I'm looking at the cup of coffee and I'm thinking about its anatomy, I could say things like, well, coffee is brown. That's what it looks like. Coffee generally is hot, although my afternoon coffee, I do like cold iced coffee. When I'm talking about this particular cup of coffee, I could say that it's inside a glass teacup. So when we're looking at these structures, the coffee, that's the anatomy. When I'm looking at the Coke, it's still also brown, but the anatomy of the Coke is that it's cold, right? It has ice in it, so it's not a hot drink. When I talk about the physiology of coffee, what Dr. Allis likes to say about the physiology of coffee is this is what brings me hope. This is what gets me going. It's what helps me make it through the day. So the job or the function of coffee, bring Dr. Allis hope. When we talk about the physiology of Coke, this is something that I use to unwind at the end of the day. It's nice to have with pizza or a hamburger. So it has a slightly different physiology. There's a little bit of caffeine in it as well, but not nearly as much as that coffee. So I did coffee and Coke with you all. What we're going to do in our groups here at the end of our time together, you're going to compare hiking boots and slippers. So you're going to do the anatomy and the physiology of hiking boots and slippers. And you're also going to do the anatomy and physiology of an inner tube compared to an anchor. So the way this is going to work, assuming that it doesn't explode when I split you into groups, I have created an online form that you're going to submit your answers to these questions in. So when you get into your group, it's probably going to be easiest if you have a mic available to try to talk with your group members. If you don't have a mic, that's totally okay. Just use the chat when you get into your group, because one person in your group is going to type all of your answers and you'll submit those answers to me for me in the Google form. So let me pull up that website for you. I apologize. We're running slow here. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to post a link here in the chat. Everyone can click on this link, but only one person in your group is going to actually submit your answers. So if you all want to click on the link, it's going to be a Google form. In just a moment, I'm going to split you up into groups. When you're in your groups, talk with each other, turn on those mics. I promise your neighbors don't bite. And even if they do, they're not right next to you, right? So one person from each group will type everyone's names. And then you'll go through, type your answers. It'll submit it to me, and I can grade it for you and get your first graded assignment here in our class. So I'm going to go ahead and split us up into groups. Please, please turn on those mics, cameras if you're comfortable, but no pressure. Let's work on our first activity together. So I'm going to split us up. Here goes nothing. It really is nothing, isn't it? It says it's creating them. Bear with me. Okay. Everyone is assigned to rooms. Does anyone see anything that tells you about the room you're assigned in? No. Fun times. Don't see anything yet. So at the very top of your screen, next to the chat bubble, let me share my screen again. Let's see if we can make this work. I want to share. Let me try this. I am opening the rooms, which I hope will let us all in once they are open. I appreciate y'all's patience with me. So sorry. Well, it still says it's opening. I don't know what that. Yeah, Shelby, I noticed that it said a lot of people left. I wonder if it kicked people into rooms. Well, this was an epic fail. Apologies to all my friends who are here. A lot of people got left, apparently. I'm gonna try, let's see. Yeah, my rooms failed to open and it probably ate my friends. If you have, so for the sake of me getting you credit, go ahead, if you've pulled up that link on your computer, go ahead and start working on the activity. I lost a bunch of my friends when I tried to open those breakout rooms. I'm not sure what happened with them, but go ahead. You have that activity. I will repost the link in the chat to make sure that we can get to us. Okay, I might have friends in some rooms, maybe. If you are not in a room, if it didn't put you there, go ahead and click on this link and just fill out the form for me. I'm going to check my rooms and see if I've got friends in them. My group appeared. Yes. Yeah, you will lose visual of the PowerPoint. So it'll just go into those rooms. Let me see if it'll let me in.
Está lleno de grupo y dice ella que no hizo. Y me checaron el set, no, tampoco, no, entonces no sabe. Mejor se la llevo a usted. Ella va diciendo y yo me voy a llegar con ella.
Osmita, do you have the link to the, yeah, I split people into groups and it may have kicked you out. Let me, here is the form that we're working on. If you click on that, it should let you in.
Yes, change my group. Now say it should have.